And now, for today's next keynote presenter, I'd like to hand it over to Kyle Tooke, who is the Global Sales Director for ThoughtWire. Kyle?
Thank you, Derek. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world that you're from. Let me share my screen real quick. As Derek provided the kind introduction, I am the Global Director of Sales for ThoughtWire, also in general a thought leader, speaker, presenter around digital twins for real estate. And I work a lot with smart city projects, smart hospital, smart building projects globally. ThoughtWire as a whole, we are a digital twin provider. We have an entire suite or platform of solutions that are focused on really a next generation of data model for real estate organizations. Just a little bit about ThoughtWire. We've been around since 2009. We got our start in smart hospital space, which is hands down the most complex data and technological type of environment that you could possibly imagine. Really working on very specific use cases. For today's keynote, what I'm going to be presenting about is providing just education around what a digital twin is, what its role is within real estate, and just help provide some guidance for those that are either just now exploring this topic or have already begun an exploration of this topic, or potentially looking to deploy this type of solution across their portfolio. So one of the things that I want to share with everyone just around the entire concept of digital twin and how it's gaining traction in the market, we're seeing this conversation come up more and more. Companies that I work with, they're asking for a myriad of different semantical terms for the same thing. They're asking for digital twin, or they're asking for a building operating system. They're asking for a master services integration platform. There's a lot of different things that this is called. But when you look at the use cases, you look at the outcomes, you look at the vision of what they are trying to accomplish, it's usually pretty typical of the same thing. And what I would encourage as for those of you that are owner-operators, for those of you that are enterprise corporates, or for those of you that are in the consulting world, whether you're an AEC or an MSI, or just a general smart building consultant, I would encourage you to invest time in understanding a digital twin, what the different types of digital twin are, and I would be elated to meet you and open that conversation with you. But here's the real reason why it's critical for you to start exploring this and going down this path. There are companies all across the globe, especially from a development perspective, that are now implementing digital twins in virtually every building that they develop. It's becoming a standard. It's the next generation, and where the concept of data models and really creating truly intelligent, smart buildings is really going down. The times when we're looking at enterprise building automation systems with an FDD and an energy management system, those days are slowly starting to diminish as companies are becoming more open in understanding the concepts of what a digital twin can do in a real estate asset. And just looking at the different types of assets, whether they're talking about hospitals, buildings, multifamily, industrial and logistics and warehousing, smart cities, there's a tremendous amount of growth and opportunity going down this path. So whether you're a technology provider who's dabbling in this space, if you're responsible for a portfolio of assets and you're looking to future-proof, you're looking to meet emissions goals between now and 2050, or if you're a consultant and you're looking for, where do I need to take my consulting practice, digital twin is a key area that I would encourage you to explore. The main thing with buildings today is there's a lot of challenges that a digital twin can solve for. if you think about the building in all of disparate data silos, there's no interconnectivity. The historic way of integrating all of these technologies is archaic, it's clunky, and it really doesn't provide anything around context, reasoning, things that truly enable you to operationalize the data. And if you think about the current state, you think about use cases tied to COVID-19, you look at social distancing, you look at monitoring, people within a space, and are they within, 4 square meters of each other or 6 square feet of each other. These types of use cases, you have to have a lot of integrated solutions to be able to realize. You have to have an understanding of the data and how they relate to each other to be able to get to this. So there's a massive amount of opportunity, and in the short amount of time that we have with you today, there's really no way for me to go through all the myriad of use cases that a digital twin can solve. But holistically, if you think about all of the use cases, you look at all of the modern outcomes that organizations are trying to accomplish, you really have to have what's called an organizational digital twin to achieve that goal. So when I say organizational digital twin, you really have to accommodate for not just the physical assets within a property, but you also have to accommodate for data points that are very dynamic, things that are constantly changing in that environment, that are tied to people or tied to processes, action, workflows, and friction points within that environment. But before we go too far down that path around an organizational digital twin, let's take a step back, right? And think about what is a digital twin. And this is something that I do a lot of speaking about. If you follow me on LinkedIn, if you've had a conversation with me before, and I think as most of you who are exploring this have probably heard 50 different definitions of a digital twin. So let's try to break this down a little bit and help you understand what are the different types of digital twins, what are their purpose, right? So if you think about a digital twin, it's a digital representation of a real world entity or a system, right? And it has to encapsulate, the physical objects, processes, organizations, persons, and other abstraction. What I want to make very clear for everyone watching this is, a digital twin is not a BIM. The second someone starts talking about BIM and moving that into operational mode and calling it a digital twin, we need to stop doing that as an industry. The BIM is not a digital twin for a myriad of different reasons. To say that a BIM is a digital twin implies that digital twin only exists for real estate and built environment, which is absolutely not true. And there's a number of use cases that even ThoughtWire, our organization that we solve for, that doesn't include any building information. We work in smart hospitals, and we deal with entire clinician workflows for the doctors, nurse practitioners, porters, or orderlies. And we focus on things like life metrics of a patient and detecting whether that patient is deteriorating, and having a digital twin of all of the systems that the clinicians are using to administer care to that patient, so that we can regrade that patient if they start to go downhill, go into sepsis, and God forbid their heart begins to stop. We can actually prevent that from happening with a digital twin around the data specific to that patient and the systems that are connected and associated with that patient. So again, no building information even involved in that entire workflow. Then also the digital twin, it's also not a 3D visualization. And I wish, folks in the industry that are pushing, the concept of digital twin would change the way that they're speaking to this. The 3D visualization is an outcome. It's not the data model itself. So that at its core is what a digital twin is. It is a data model. It is a living, ever-changing, ever-evolving data model that is real-time, utilizes AI, machine learning. And then what you put on top of that from a service perspective, whatever applications is leveraging that data or ingesting that data or showing a visualization, that's all in the service layer. And so hopefully that helps the folks watching this understand a little bit better around what a digital twin is and what a digital twin is not. But I would also make sure that when you think about a digital twin that you're asking the right questions. You know, what is the problem or the purpose that you're trying to solve with a digital twin? What are the use cases that I want to solve for? What types of data is required and where does it reside? How do I integrate and semantically tag that data? What's the complexity of the data model? Because not only are there specific digital twins that are industry specific or asset type specific. For example, there's companies out there that provide digital twins around microgrids and city infrastructure. There's digital twins for built environment, which is probably what's most pertinent for the folks that are watching this. There's digital twins around specific assets like a transmission or an oil derrick. So there's not just one type of digital twin, which is another thing why I think a lot of individuals are becoming disenchanted with even the terminology of digital twin. Every time I'm on LinkedIn, for example, and I see someone talk about digital twin, they're talking about it generically. Digital twin is this, when really what they need to be saying is a specific type of digital twin for a specific type of asset class. An example of that would be an organizational digital twin for built environment. That is a specific type of digital twin. Let me share with you just a few examples of that. If you think about the historic or the origination of digital twin, you have what's called a discrete digital twin, which is very simplistic. It's very narrow in scope and value of what it offers. It is literally taking a physical object and creating a digital representation of it. An example of that would be like a transmission of a car. Not a very complex entity or asset, and very static in the type of data that is being translated into digital form. But then you look at composite digital twins. Now, composite digital twins, a great example of this is what you see a lot of companies in the industry are touting their digital twin technology, which is a digital representation of built environment or a building. And they'll usually use terminology of a single pane of glass or a single UUI, and it integrates everything IT, OT, IoT within the built environment. Now, with a composite digital twin, though, you're typically focused on the physical or static assets. Again, the IT, OT, IoT that's in that property. But there's other types of digital twins. There's process digital twins. I gave you a great example of one just a little bit ago. I'll give you one more. Is if you think about an orderly moving a patient from their room to critical care and orchestrating not only all the other orderlies who may be assigned to that patient and providing transparency on who's actually accepting the job to go and move the patient from A to B, but also what are the assets that I need to transport? Where's the stretcher, the bed, the wheelchair, the different devices that I may need depending on that patient's condition to get them from their room to the emergency care or the emergency surgery room. And then also maybe there's an elevator down, right? So what's the most optimal path for me to get to that patient's room to the emergency surgery room, right? Orchestrating all of that, and that is in real time, it's changing as things are happening, and it's providing transparency across multiple stakeholders that are involved in that workflow, and then acknowledging who's accepted, who's busy with another patient and can't actually move that patient from A to B. All of that happening in real time and orchestrating that process of getting that patient from A to B is what is considered a process digital twin, or an example of that. Now, when you bring all of this together, and as I shared in an earlier slide, is when you bring together everything that is physical assets, so the IT, OT, IoT, you bring together the processes, so what's happening in real time, what are the workflows, what are facility engineers doing, or what does their process look like for tackling a hot-cold request, just as an easy example. And then also bringing in the data around people that is dynamically changing. Where are people? How are they moving? How are they interacting with the environment? When you bring all of that together, it's semantically tagged, it's associated using typical standards like brick, haystack, but the challenging with those standards is they don't really accommodate for dynamic data very well, which is why companies like ThoughtWire, we have to provide our own extension, our own proprietary schema to accommodate for that dynamic data and still make sense in context and reasoning of what's going on in real time in these spaces. And then when you look at healthcare, you have standards like HL7 for those of you who deal with healthcare assets. But when you bring all of that together as a data model, now you have what's called an organizational digital twin. This is where ThoughtWire plays in the industry. So what does this look like when we talk about a building ecosystem? So if you think about a single building or you think about an entire portfolio, most companies have zero ability to standardize assets or underlying technologies across a global portfolio. So you may have, a Delta Controls and a Siemens and a JCI and a Honeywell, Tritium BAS across different assets. But if you have an organizational digital twin in place that is across the entire portfolio, imagine being able to bring all of the disparate, unique data into an organizational digital twin. And as it's ingested, normalizing that data and semantically tagging it so that it all makes sense. And this allows you to curate common experiences for employees if we're talking about digital workplace, or if we're talking about operations and building out a building operating system within these buildings, creating a common interface or a common experience for those end users across multiple buildings where there's totally unique systems in each and every single one of those properties. And then what you put on top of that data model is it can be unique depending on vendor. With ThoughtWire scenario, we have a few different UIs that we provide. We have a prescriptive and predictive analytics platform that is persona specific, that sits on top of that digital twin that allows you to get modeling and different types of what if scenarios, and then proactively pushing information out to facilities, and also providing a reasoning engine into providing additional context in triaging the hundreds or thousands of notifications, alerts, and tickets that come into facilities, reprioritizing those based on severity, cost, risk, magnitude of impact. I'll share an example of that with you here in just a moment. But then looking at what are the applications that are sitting on top of that. So you have companies right now, and I run into this all the time, where I'll look at an RFP, or I'll be talking to an organization that are focused on digital workplace. They want their experience app in place. And that's all well and good, but one of the things that I always ask is, what's the data strategy? What's the value behind putting in a employee workplace experience other than putting some digital amenities in the hands of the employees? What are you doing with that workplace app that's actually augmenting or impacting how you operate that building, and going deeper into that experience of what is it like engaging and being in this property that has that workplace experience app? It's one of the things that I really encourage, and when I do consulting work, I try to get organizations thinking about this as a holistic vision or a platform vision across a single building or an entire portfolio. You need to have whatever your digital workplace platform feeding into a digital twin that can then take that context, take that information around real-time interactions with that app from people, and that should be impacting the building operating system and different automations, different workflows. It should be providing additional context around that. And as things are dynamically changing here, as things are changing within the IT, OT, and IoT portion of the ecosystem, you have to have something real time. You need to have a feedback loop. You need to have some legitimate AI machine learning. An example of what ThoughtWire does with comfort controls, or comfort for AI is what we call it, is I can take all of the historical, I can take real time, I can take future state and scheduling of what spaces are going to be occupied when. I can take data from weather and humidity, and I can fine tune the building automation system in real time with the digital twin by providing that context of what's going on dynamically in that building. And I can either fine tune an individual zone, space, floor, the entire building based upon comfort, or based on energy optimization. And that encompasses, HVAC and lighting. But it's got to be real time, and you need to be able to operationalize that data. And that's what you get with a organizational digital twin, is that real time understanding and context of what's actually going on. So I just have a few minutes left. So I want to run through an example of just one thing that you can do when you have an organizational digital twin in place. So if I'm a facility manager, right, and I'm looking at a dashboard, so this would be a single pane of glass, a UUI of everything that's going on in the built environment. And I don't want to have 8 or 9 different UIs up on different monitors. I want to have one that's prioritizing and making decisions on my behalf and telling me the things that are most mission critical. So we call this insights. But if I can have a system that is looking at, okay, I have an anomaly here where I'm looking at more than typical hot-cold requests coming from floor 12. Okay, well, so it's telling me there's an anomaly. That's cool. But what does that even mean? So if I click into that, it brings me into the next screen that gives me more granular detail into what's going on. And keep in mind, because an organizational digital twin is integrated with your IoT occupancy sensors, it's integrated with your digital workplace platform, it's integrated in with your facility management system, your CMMS. It's integrated with literally everything that is IP enabled and has a data point within this environment. So as I'm looking at this, I can see that there's a spike in hot requests, okay, on floor 12. I can see what does my occupancy look like during this time frame. There's not any real spike there. So it's not like I have a whole bunch more people in this space than what's normally there at the point in time where this spike occurred. But if I go and I look at the floor plate, I can see where every individual was who entered that hot ticket, right? I can see whether it was one really annoying person or whether it was 8 individual people, which I can see here. I can see the spaces that were most impacted. I can also look and see the CMMS tickets or the facility management tickets that are also pertinent to this space. So we have a VAV reheating coil alarm that's impacting 20 people and a fan cooling unit filter alarm that's impacting 10 people. But let's take it even further, providing more context into what's actually happening. If I look at my intelligent notifications, I can see, okay, here's this VAV box that has something going on. There's 40 people affected. There's 5 notifications associated with it, as well as 2 tickets that are also pertinent to this one critical notification that's coming into facilities. I can then look and see, all right, I can see current state. I can see what the set point is, so we're not meeting that set point. I can, again, see occupancy versus how many people are normally in that space. Then I can also see all of the different notifications that are in the value chain that's semantically tagged and could be at the root cause of what's really going on with the performance of this VAV box. And this is just a couple of layers. This can get extremely granular depending upon how many systems are integrated within that environment. So at the end of the day, if you think about a digital twin, the real power for a built environment of what you can get is really around the context and reasoning that can not only improve experiences for the occupants of that building, the operators of that building, but also help you do things that are going to optimize the operations of that building. So anything that is tied to intelligent cleaning, anything that's tied to reduction in energy consumption, anything that is tied to the actual workflows and augmenting those workflows. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just eliminate 95% of the hot-cold requests that come into a facility management team, right? Which is hands down the most prevalent ticket that a facilities team gets. If you have the infrastructure in place, if you have a digital twin in place, and then you're putting the technology in the hands of the occupants of that building to allow them to tweak thermostat by a couple of degrees, and then have a algorithm that's then going to go back to the original set point, you can virtually eliminate that entire workflow. It's a massive amount of time of engineering time that you could completely do away with. So if you have any additional questions, I would encourage you to meet me in the chat room after this. I would love to have the conversation with you. If you're interested in ThoughtWire or you want to learn more about digital twin for a built environment, you can join us at thoughtwire.com. You can connect with me on my LinkedIn profile, or you can give me a call or shoot me an email. We'd love to have the conversation. Thank you so much for the time today. Look forward to chatting with you in the chat room here in just a few minutes.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Kyle. Thank you for the presentation. As for the attendees who are in this session, if you have any questions right now, because you won't be able to make it to the chat session or anything, please write it in the chat box that's right here, not the session. To get into the session, please look on the left side of your screen at the sessions button, click on that, and then go into the session for Kyle. Before we close out, I have one question I wanted to ask you, Kyle.
Sure.
Within your presentation, you mentioned that there were, I saw 4 different types of kind of a digital twin that someone could utilize: the discrete model, the composite, the process, and the organizational model. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips for any of the attendees on how to go about thinking which one of those models best applies to their situation? Maybe some bullet points of what they should be initially thinking about?
So if you go back, Derek, to the types of questions that you need to ask on that slide, which I can, if anyone would like the slide deck, I'll be happy to share it with them. But you really need to start with asking the right questions, right? So what are the use cases that I'm trying to solve for? What vision do I have for this particular building or environment or entire portfolio? You got to have the proper stakeholders in alignment, part of that conversation going towards that common goal. But once you've defined the use cases, then you can back into what's the raw data that I need to bring together and associate to answer those questions and enable those use cases. What service layer or apps can I put on top of that data to enable that? And then, if all you're looking for is, I just want a 2D or a 3D visualization or representation of the property, and I want to see the assets mapped on the floor plate. If that's all the value you're looking for out of a digital twin, then you can get away with a composite or a discrete digital twin. A composite digital twin is at least going to give you understanding of the IT, OT, IoT, but a discrete is basically going to say, here's that asset, that building, here's a picture of it, right? But again, you're not going to have a whole lot of value there. Most companies that I'm speaking to, they're looking for analytics. They're looking for prescriptive and predictive understanding of the environment. They're looking for a much more complex type of scenario. And I would say the second that an organization starts talking about building operating system and they start talking about digital workplace platform, you need to start immediately at organizational digital twin, and you need to find that AEC firm or that smart building consultant who has done it before, who have integrated those platforms, and get their help. If you try to do it alone, you're going to struggle, right? It is a very complex thing. It's a very new thing. But there are organizations out there that have done it before, that have integrated some very complex environments with, I know one in particular that worked on the American Dream project in New Jersey that was a massive number of systems that they integrated. But I would encourage you to find that AEC or find that smart building consultant who's actually executed on a massive integration project and who has looked at the digital workplace platform and the building operating system and married that into a platform, if you want to really go down the path of organizational digital twin.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. I see that we're slightly over there. For any attendees, if you have any questions or want to continue the conversation with Kyle, please go into the sessions. Kyle will be there for another 5-10 minutes to chat with you guys. And thank you, Kyle, so much for your time today. Everyone, please come back in around 30 minutes at 4:30 for our next keynote speaker. who will be Miguel Negora, who's the head of strategic ventures for Fifth Wall in Europe. Thank you so much for your time, Kyle.
Thank you, Derek.